Nestled deep in the Kingdom of Zaria, there was a place like no other. Known to outsiders as Queen Amina's Academy for Women, it had stood for 26 long years, untouched by the outside world, and guarded by strict tradition. This place was unlike any other school. It was a fortress where young girls entered at birth and left as women, fully prepared for the world but utterly ignorant of one thing: men. The academy had been established with a singular mission: to protect the kingdom's daughters from the temptations of the outside world. No male figure had ever crossed its gates, not even a father or brother. All the students, teachers, and staff were women, and the girls had grown up knowing no different. To them, men were simply stories in books, mythical figures who lived in faraway lands. For 26 years, this balance remained unbroken. The academy flourished, its students excelling in their studies, unaware of the outside world beyond the ivy-covered walls. Life was predictable, safe, and entirely focused on knowledge, art, and self-discipline. But all of that would change with the arrival of a stranger who would unknowingly disrupt their world forever. One fateful morning, as a thick mist covered the valley, the tranquility of the academy was shattered. Kelechi, a lost traveler from the neighboring village, had wandered too far into the wilderness. He had been on a journey through the forest, searching for an old family heirloom that his ancestors had once buried near Zaria. Exhausted and disoriented, he stumbled into the school grounds, unaware of the sacred space he had just entered. At first, the students thought he was a dream, a figment of their imagination. Whispers rippled through the courtyard as some of the younger girls shrieked in shock. They had never seen a man in their lives. Kelechi, tall and weathered from his travels, looked like a creature from another world to them. Teachers rushed forward to contain the situation, hurrying the students away as if they had seen something dangerous. But Aisha, standing at the back of the group, found herself rooted to the spot. Her heart raced, but not out of fear. She was intrigued, fascinated by the man's presence, his rugged appearance, the deep kindness in his eyes. This was the first man she had ever laid eyes on, and it stirred something inside her. Madam Kelechi, the strict headmistress, quickly took control. "Who are you? What is your business here?" she demanded, her voice sharp and cold. Kelechi, realizing he had somehow trespassed, lowered his gaze and apologized profusely. "I didn't mean to intrude," he explained. "I'm just a traveler, lost in the woods. I had no idea this place even existed." His explanation did little to calm the headmistress's fury. "No man is allowed within these walls. You must leave immediately." With a wave of her hand, the guard seized Kelechi and led him away, but not without leaving behind a profound impact. The students, especially the older ones, couldn't stop whispering about the man. They had spent their lives learning about history, science, and literature, but the idea of a man had always seemed distant, abstract. And now, one had appeared right before their eyes. But while others were consumed by shock and confusion, Aisha felt something else. A flicker of curiosity and wonder grew in her heart. She couldn't forget the man's gentle eyes and the way he had spoken so kindly. Who was he, really? What was the world like beyond these walls? The questions gnawed at her, keeping her awake at night. In the days that followed Kelechi's unexpected appearance, the academy entered a state of high alert. Madam Kelechi and the governing council were determined to keep the students focused on their studies and prevent further disruption. Strict new rules were put in place. No one was to speak of the man, and no one was allowed near the area where he was being temporarily held before being escorted back to the village. But rules were not enough to stop the gossip. The older girls would gather in their dormitories at night, whispering stories about the stranger. Some were frightened, imagining all sorts of dangers. Others were curious, wondering what men were really like. They had grown up hearing about men as distant figures, but now one had been in their very presence. Aisha, however, was different from the rest. She wasn't content with whispered stories. She needed to see the man again, to speak with him, to understand who he was. Her mind was filled with thoughts of him. How could someone who looked so kind be seen as a threat? She decided to break the rules. Under the cover of night, Aisha began sneaking out of her dormitory. The guards patrolled the grounds, but Aisha knew the layout of the academy better than anyone. She found a hidden path through the garden, a way to reach the small building where Kelechi was being kept without being seen. The first time she approached him, her heart pounded in her chest. She had never done anything like this before, defying the rules, risking punishment. But something about Kelechi drew her in. When she finally saw him again, sitting quietly in the moonlight, her fears melted away. Kelechi looked up and saw her. His eyes widened in surprise. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "I know," Aisha replied, her voice soft but steady. "I just wanted to talk. I have so many questions." Over the next few weeks, Aisha continued to sneak out, meeting Kelechi under the stars. Their conversations ranged from tales of Kelechi's travels to stories about the outside world that Aisha had only read about in books. Kelechi described bustling cities, vast oceans, and people from all walks of life. To Aisha, it sounded like a dream. She had spent her entire life within the walls of the academy, and now she longed to see what lay beyond. But their bond grew deeper than just friendship. Kelechi was kind and gentle, unlike the stories she had heard about men. He spoke to her as an equal, not as someone to be feared or controlled. Slowly, Aisha realized that she wasn't just curious about Kelechi, she was falling in love with him. One night, after weeks of secret meetings, Aisha and Kelechi sat beneath the stars, closer than ever. The air was filled with the sweet scent of jasmine, and the moon cast a soft glow on the garden. "I've shown you the world through my stories," Kelechi said softly, "but there's something more important than all the places I've been. It's love. It's the one thing that makes life truly beautiful." Aisha's heart raced as she looked into Kelechi's eyes. She had never felt this way before, this overwhelming sense of connection, of belonging. She knew that her feelings for Kelechi went beyond simple curiosity. She had fallen in love with him, and it terrified and exhilarated her at the same time. Kelechi reached out and gently took her hand. "I love you, Aisha," he whispered. Tears filled Aisha's eyes. "I love you too," she replied. In that moment, all the rules, all the traditions of the academy faded away. All that mattered was the love they had found in each other. But their love was not meant to remain a secret. One fateful night, Madam Kelechi discovered Aisha sneaking back to her dormitory. The headmistress was furious. She immediately called a meeting of the school council, and Aisha was brought before them. "You have broken the most sacred rule of this academy," Madam Kelechi declared. "You have consorted with a man, a stranger who had no place here. For this, you must be punished." The council's decision was swift and harsh. Aisha was to be banished from the academy, expelled for her actions. The other students watched in stunned silence as Aisha stood before them, her head held high despite the shame that was heaped upon her. But Aisha felt no shame. She had found something more important than the rules of the academy, she had found love. The next morning, Aisha gathered her few belongings and left the academy for the last time. Kelechi was waiting for her at the edge of the forest, just as he had promised. Together, they walked away from the only life Aisha had ever known, hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges the world might throw at them. Aisha had lost her place at the academy, but she had gained something far more valuable. She had found love, and with Kelechi by her side, she knew that she would never be alone again. As they disappeared into the horizon, Aisha felt a sense of freedom she had never known. She was no longer bound by the rules and traditions of the academy. She was free to love, to explore, and to live her life on her own terms.